So we have a few more minutes. We will start at 2 o'clock sharp. Looking forward to a lively session this afternoon. Hi Mutendei, good to see you. Hi Destiny, good to see you. Mutendei, please join the Zoom chat. I'm not seeing you on the Zoom chat. Mutendei, please join. Okay, so I'm waiting for Mutendei to join the Zoom chat. He hasn't come across yet. All right, that's great. Okay, hello. So everybody's here. Thank you. That's great. So we'll just give it another minute and then we'll get started. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm calling this series Jennylynd's Writers Collective. And so what we do on a Sunday afternoon is a few book readings from some of my publications, and then I have the honor of speaking with writers and authors from all over the place. So this afternoon I have guest authors Mutendei Nabutete, all the way from Kenya. He's joining us all the way from Kenya. So this is very exciting. Thank you so much. It's so good to have you this afternoon. And then also I have Francis Jeffers, who's here in Toronto. And Francis has given up part of his Sunday afternoon to be with us and explain some of his exciting projects. So thank you so much to both of you. What I'd like to do first is tell the audience. So I have people watching on Instagram Live and Facebook Live. So it's an exciting afternoon. And let's hope technology cooperates with us throughout the session. So what I'll do is introduce the audience to some of my publications and then do some book readings. Then I'll proceed with the author interviews. So authors, maybe you can turn off your screens for the moment until it's time to do a chat with you. Okay? So audience, what I'll do is tell you a bit about some of my publications. The first book I wrote was Escape from Ireland. I'm not sure if you can see this on the screen, but Escape from Ireland talks about my life and adventures in Ireland. I was there for 7 years as an immigrant. I started a business and had lots of adventures. And then I moved to Toronto when the economy crashed in Ireland. And I had such a profound experience there that I had to write the book. So Escape from Ireland was my first publication. The next one, Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. It talks about moving to Toronto and what life was like as a newcomer to Toronto. Now, I'd gone to school in Montreal, and as a university student, great experiences, but moving and living to Toronto, now that was a culture shock. And I came from Ireland to settle here in 2011. The next book I wrote is called Red Car, Long Legs. I had lived and worked in Southern California for about 6 years and had so many adventures, I had to put them in writing. So Red Car, Long Legs talks about adventures not only in California, but I was sent out on work assignments to Latin America, Ecuador, Honduras, Costa Rica, many countries. And I saw so many interesting things and met with so many interesting people. Learn about the culture, the food, etc. in various countries. So Red Car, Long Legs talks about those adventures. And I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally. I left home in 1992, so a long time ago. And this book, Drive, talks about the experience of going back to my home country, Trinidad and Tobago, as an expat, and what life is like when I go back. Everything has changed. The people I used to know have moved on. So Drive talks about that, taking foreign friends to visit Trinidad and what it's like to return for happy and sad times. One sad time was when my mother died 2 years ago of Alzheimer's disease. And this book, Where Are My Car Keys, talks about my family's journey as my mom suffered from Alzheimer's disease over a 10-year period. So it goes step by step of how we felt and what happened. I wrote this as a form of healing back in 2018, and it really helped me to deal with the loss of my mother. I also did an illustrated children's book, Is That My Granny? And again, it's my mother's story as told through the eyes of my nephews who watched their granny deteriorate over many years. The most recent publication, and what we're going to read from today, is Mrs. Somebody. So it's a novel, it's fiction. So my first experiment with writing a fictional novel, but a lot of the stories are true. Some of my stories and some are stories of women that I met over the years. So what I'll do, I will just go through the introduction to Mrs. Somebody. Tell you a little bit about the book. Mrs. Somebody is loosely based on true stories of women I met in my travels spanning the 1990s and through the 2000s. I may have been a very good listener over the years because many women would ply me with tales about their dating exploits. Without judgment, I managed to keep a mental note of some bizarre sketches which I've used in writing this novel. The plot follows the lives of 5 young women who meet in university and continue their friendship after graduating into the working world. Life of youths in their teens in North America in the 1990s would be considered by some as untamed debauchery, with carefree sex, drinking, dating, and socializing. The same behavior continues to this day. Society puts extra psychological demands on young women, however, with the idea that they must get married young and have children. When some women enter university, is with the desire to marry well, as instructed in family values handed down for generations and societal norms. Yes, getting your degree is important, but don't forget the MRS. So, in Mrs. Somebody, we talk a lot about that, and there are lots of stories about dating and trying to get the MRS. Okay, so let me see who is who has joined us here on Facebook Live. Just leave me a note, let me know who is here. So I see Mrs. Birch. Mrs. Birch was there. And who else? Let me reconnect to Facebook Live. Let's see what's happening. Yes, so we're reconnecting to Facebook Live. I think we lost the connection. So let's see what happens. It's a little slow this afternoon. All right. While I'm waiting for Facebook to get started back, let me continue with the readings. Yeah, Facebook is running a little slower. The connection is not the best. All right, what I'll do, I'll proceed with the readings on Zoom so that we don't lose too much time. So I'll read a bit of chapter 1. And this is when our protagonist is going to start university. And I have a lovely video to share with our viewers. It talks a little bit about the book.
Jasmine leaves home for university and wonders how many boys she would sleep with before finding her husband. Joining 4 other girls, the quest to become Mrs. Somebody continues as they graduate, moving to jobs in the big city. Trials of internet courtships, speed dating, matchmakers, and chance encounters bring our heroines into the messy world of romance. Stories of passionate pursuit reveal the great lengths some women would go to get that ring and beat the biological clock. Is the search more interesting than marriage? Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring.
Okay, so that was our book trailer for Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. And our protagonist, Jasmine, is entering university in chapter 1. Wouldn't it be exciting to have a different boyfriend for every day of the week? Jasmine asked herself this question as she applied to university in Walter Mac. Even though she considered her household liberal compared to others, she still felt confident enough to bring boys. She didn't feel confident enough to bring boys home because of the scrutiny of her parents and her brother. Living on campus offered the opportunity to explore and experiment, and she was determined to make the most of it. Many of her school friends were staying close to home and possibly attending the local community college. As her family drove Jasmine to Residence Hall at Walter Mac, she looked around. Everything looked small and neat. And on the main street, there were more bars and restaurants than she had ever seen in such a small area. Jasmine envisioned large crowds of students partying at the bars as her family drove past. When they got to Bennett House, Jasmine stepped back to take a good look at the building. It was a large red brick 5-story structure that housed at least 300 students. Each room came furnished, and she had selected a shared room so she could have company during her first year. Each floor also had shared bathrooms and a living space where students frequented the TV room. "Jasmine, don't forget to wear clean clothes every day," said her mother. "And don't just eat from the dessert bar in the cafeteria. Remember to pick some nutritious vegetables too." "Oh, Mom, you're acting like I'm a child. I'm an adult, remember?" she protested. Her brother chimed in too. "Mind your manners, Jazz. I can't believe, but I might just miss you." That's what he said as he gave her a hug. Jasmine's father hugged his big baby girl, and she could swear she saw his eyes water up a bit, but he was hiding it. After long farewells and many hugs, Jasmine's family left and she was on her own for the first time in her life. Just as they left, she felt fine and started happily unpacking. However, after about half an hour, she sat in the room gripped with fear. She bawled until she could cry no more. For the first time in her life, she was completely alone in a space where she didn't yet know anyone. She tried to figure out how to cope and walked around in a daze to the cafeteria. She picked a few morsels of food and then went back to her floor. As she entered the bathroom down the hallway, an Asian girl walked in. "Hello, I'm Fanny," she said. Jasmine held up her hand and waved sadly. "Where are you from, Fanny?" "I came from Malaysia," she said with a thick accent. "It's the first time with no family. I'm so sad." Jasmine told Fanny it was her first time alone too, and she realized her situation wasn't unique. Many other students were alone and she'd just have to grow up. It was an initiation into adulthood. Okay, so let's see. Facebook Live. Let's see who's out there. Who in the audience has been to university campus and staying at university campus? Send me a message in the chat. Anybody? Send me a message. Let's hear what your experience has been. And you can write a message in the chat box and I will try to answer. What about those on Insta Live? Send me a message. Instagram Live. We have a few people listening in. All right. So I'm going to continue with the readings now and some of Jasmine's adventures on campus. It wasn't long before Jasmine met an extremely good-looking international student, Arif from Pakistan. Arif was the student mentor and house supervisor at the dorm. He was a first-year graduate student with a charismatic flair and all the girls liked him. He was tall and muscular with longish hair that hung in front of his right eye, and he would constantly brush away his hair with one hand while speaking to students. This drove the girls wild. "Hi, Arif. How are you doing?" said a group of second-year students as they passed him in the hallway, giggling. "Hi there, I'm fine," he responded, not actually noticing their gushing admiration. Jasmine observed their behavior and wondered if it would be out of her league to go on a date with this amazing hunk, Arif. She asked around the dorm, and according to the grapevine, he was actually single and looking for a girlfriend. That was enough encouragement for Jasmine to plan a strategy to meet him. Arif was available by appointment to help new students settle on campus and orient them with campus activities and clubs. He was also available to manage disputes at the dorm. Jasmine formulated an elaborate complaint and a list of needs in order to meet with him. She got dressed in a revealing sheer cream top and tight jeans and applied a generous amount of makeup before their appointment time. Then she went down to the student lounge, smelling as sweet as a rose. Arif noticed this beautiful girl who came to speak with him and was visibly infatuated. He tried his best to give Jasmine all the pointers she needed on clubs to join on campus, how to make friends, etc. He doubted she would have any problems in making friends, since she looked like an extrovert and she was very beautiful. Jasmine continued to find reasons to speak to Arif every second day, fantasizing about going out with him and kissing him. She couldn't understand why he wouldn't ask her out. Eventually, her desire got the better of her, and she decided she would just ask him to go out. She didn't yet trust anyone on campus to tell her stories, so she just went bravely one evening and asked him out to the pub. Arif was flattered and usually didn't accept advances from girls on campus. However, he decided to make an exception for Jasmine, the tall, beautiful brunette from the 3rd floor. They sipped sodas at the side of a booth in one of the local pubs near the campus. The place was relatively quiet since it was Tuesday night, and this suited Jasmine just fine because she had his undivided attention. They chat about studies and campus life, and all the time Jasmine wondered how she would seduce Arif and get a big hug from those strong arms. He looked like he exercised at the gym regularly, and his muscles protruded from the front of his small blue t-shirt. Eventually, Jasmine threw herself on his chest and, looking up like a small child, asked for a big hug. He obliged by giving her a friendly hug, but wanted to keep a polite distance. Jasmine couldn't help herself. Arif was so cute and available. You have the strong Mrs. Somebody. So we have connection issues. Let's see what's happening. Something happened here. Oh. Right, Facebook is giving trouble, but those on Zoom, are you hearing me? Just let me know, are you hearing me? Francis and Mutendei? Are you hearing me on?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
great. Because Facebook got cut off, which is too bad, but we will continue on Zoom. So now I am going to read about another incident on campus where Jasmine met a group of girls who she would form lifelong friendships with. In her 3rd week of classes, Jasmine was able to quickly develop a network of close girlfriends. The lecturer of an introductory business class randomly placed students into groups for an assignment. Each group was supposed to meet during the week to decide on a topic, divide responsibilities for research, and then develop a class presentation. Jasmine's group consisted of Ariam, Carla, Winsome, and Lara. The girls exchanged phone numbers and decided to meet the following evening at the Student Union building, which was a central location. When they finally sat around the table to go through the details of the class project, they also excitedly exchanged stories about how they came to Walter Mac. Lara was a tall redhead. She stood 5 feet 10 inches tall. She had long, wild, curly hair, which fell to the back of her shoulder blades. Then there was Winsome. Winsome said she was born in the Caribbean and moved to Waltermac to go to university. Her parents were from a wealthy black family in Barbados, and they wanted their daughter to go to school abroad. Next, there was Carla. Carla grew up a few miles from Waltermac, and she was of a Slavic background, and her parents immigrated from the Czech Republic. Then there was Ariam. Her parents moved to the United States from Korea because her father had gotten a job near to Waltermac. The girls lived in different student residence halls but met a few times in the following weeks at the Student Union building to discuss their project. Eventually, they developed a great rapport and decided to continue meeting to go to campus activities. So now I'll tell you about one such time when they all went out. Jasmine met with her classmates 2 days later to plan their social activities for the coming weeks. "I heard that foreign guys are the best ones to date," said Carla. "Where did you get that idea from?" "Well, that's what some of my older cousins told me, so I believe them." "Well, girls, let's go out there and see who we can find." Jasmine's dorm had a party that weekend in the large cafeteria, and all the tables and chairs were going to be removed. People from all over campus were invited. So Jasmine invited her new friends to the shindig. They felt it was the ideal time to discover who the potential husbands could be. The theme that night was Toga Fest, so everyone was going to dress in bed sheets and cloths. Jasmine made up her mind that if she met a boy she liked that night, she might go all the way. The walls of the hall were decorated with branches, and white helium balloons were scattered throughout the venue. 2 large strobe lights played in front of a DJ and scattered light throughout the room as the loud music pounded from speakers. Jasmine was wearing her toga, a ton of makeup, and a big smile. They all noticed her for sure. When her girlfriends arrived, they all screamed "party time" and dashed onto the dance floor. This was supposed to be an alcohol-free event, but some students had a few kegs of beer and bottles of vodka in the nearby rooms. For $1, one could get a shot or spike a glass of orange juice and return undetected to the hall where some older students were monitoring. Jasmine, Lara, Ariam, Winsome, and Carla became tipsy very quickly because they were not used to drinking vodka. Jasmine spied a cute African guy and overheard some girls call him Mike. He was one of the hottest dancers on the floor, and many girls danced close to Mike to get his attention. And so Jasmine decided she would make Mike her conquest for that night. After all, her group said they would try to date foreign guys. They were supposed to be better than the locals, whatever that meant. Jasmine pranced around Mike, and his interest piqued. He was tall, dark, and muscular. His broad face and big eyes were crowned with a huge smile. "And who are you?" he asked. "I haven't seen you on campus before." "Well, I'm a first-year student, single and ready to mingle," she said. Mike and Jasmine danced like there was no tomorrow, and as the DJ pounded rhythms of techno music, they continued dancing. Carla had paired up with Nico from Greece, and Lara was gushing when she met Yoshi from Japan. Winsome also met Aidan, a student from Ireland with a strong Irish accent. After a few hours of prancing, Jasmine invited Mike to check out the posters in her room. He knew what that invitation meant and followed sheepishly, waving farewell to his buddies who were watching on the sidelines. "Have fun," they said, waving to him as he left with Jasmine. Jasmine and Mike kissed passionately as he fumbled to unlock the door to her bedroom. His big arms enfolded her and his lips swallowed hers. She could barely breathe, and his body heaved against her. "Just a minute, let me open the door," she urged. Okay, okay. Jasmine managed to open the door, and luckily her roommate was out that night. So to find out what happens next, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. We are going to take a pause right now. Let me see if I can add us back to Facebook. Let's see what people on Facebook are saying. So tell me if you're hearing the presentation okay. Facebook friends. So let's get some comments. What do you think about Jasmine's behavior? Those on Facebook. What is this? Okay, any comments from those on Facebook? Did anyone have similar experiences in university? Let me know what you think. How about those listening on Instagram Live? What do you think of that story? Jasmine's behavior. Wasn't that something? So they all went there, not just to get a degree, but to get the MRS degree. So when you think of Mrs. Somebody, what she did for that ring, lots of people go to university not just to get their degree, but to get the MRS. So this book talks a lot about that. If you want to find out more about my publications, go to jennylyndjames.com/books, and there you'd see all about the books. And today I'm giving away free ebooks to anyone who subscribes to my website. So jennylyndjames.com/books. If you subscribe to my website, you will get a copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. So go on and subscribe to the website. I'm going to put the link in the chat box for those on Facebook. jennylyndjames.com/books. So just subscribe to my website and I will send you a free e-copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring. Now I'm going to do one more reading. But before I do, can you guess who was the first person to get married of all the girls? Of all the girls in this story? Can anybody guess? Let's see on Facebook. Can anybody guess who was the first in the group to get married? Anybody? Maybe a few of you have read the book already, but we have quite a few. It was 5 girls in the story. Jasmine, Ariam, who was Korean, of Korean descent. Winsome, who is from Barbados. We have Carla, of Slavic descent, and Lara, who was of Irish descent. So 5 girls who had great fun around the campus, but one of them got married first when they were about to graduate, actually. So can anybody guess who was the first to get married? I'm going to read from the book and tell you. I'm not seeing any guesses, so I'll just tell you. It was, drum roll, Winsome from Barbados. She was the first to get married. And I'll tell you some of the drama surrounding the marriage. Now, it happened just at graduation time. And she met a wonderful Filipino young man who proposed. He popped the question. So we have a whole scene about that and the nervousness around the proposal, etc. But the parents were not too happy with her decision. So I'll tell you about some of the drama. One time when she called home, "Mommy, I've already bought my wedding dress. It's so pretty." Winsome screamed into the phone one day when she called home. "Wedding dress? You mean you're still going through with that insane wedding?" asked her mother, hoping Winsome would have somehow changed her mind. "You know I am," said Winsome, laughing. She had worn down her parents over the weeks with continuous phone calls of reassurance, and they reluctantly accepted her decision. "Can you please send me money for the graduation gown, rental, and photographs? I really want to get the souvenir school ring too. They have so many pretty designs." "Young lady, money doesn't grow on trees, you know," her mother said with a smirk in her voice. Winsome knew that she was the only child and could probably get her parents to support her request, considering her grades were good and she showed focus and a bright future. "I got accepted into the MBA program. I'm so excited," she said. "So do you need money for the wedding reception?" Her mother continued. "My daughter is not going to have any poor shabby wedding, you know. I'm sending extra money so you can buy beautiful flowers and have a fancy cake and tasty food," said her mother. "Oh, you don't need to fuss about the wedding, Mommy. It's going to be simple," said Winsome. "Not at all," said her mother. "I wouldn't want your in-laws to think you're from some poor, wretched family. Make sure you have a nice spread at the event. I'm paying for it. And also your Aunt Susie is coming for the graduation and the wedding. You know how fussy she is with decorations. Hire a good florist to fix your bouquet and put lots of flowers on the outdoor furniture since you're doing an outdoor wedding." The orders were coming from her mother fast and furious, and the simple wedding was getting a little more complicated than Winsome had planned. However, if her parents wanted to send money for the wedding reception, she wouldn't refuse it. At least they had finally come to terms with her marriage. So a bit of drama on graduation day and the day before the wedding. Let's look at what happened. Winsome's mother, father, and Aunt Susie had flown in from Barbados to Greenwood via the international airport in Hamilton. It was a long journey that involved several connecting flights. Then they rented a car to drive to Walter Mac. Winsome's family checked into one of the university hotels the night before the graduation. She met her parents at the hotel and they all hugged her and looked her over from head to toe. The family went out to dinner that night at the best restaurant she could recommend in town. "You look so skinny. Why haven't you eaten well, Winsome?" her mother scolded. "Oh, look at my daughter. She's all grown up." "You look a bit skinny, it's true," agreed her aunt. "She's just more mature. Leave her alone," said her father. "She looks very pretty. That's my little girl." "Mommy, I am just the right size. I really don't need to be bigger than this. If I had gained weight, you would have told me I was fat, right?" They all laughed. People in their family were known to talk about weight and size all the time. Terrence's family also arrived the night before the graduation, and they were staying at a hotel near Walter Mac. His mother, father, brother, sister, and grandparents were all in town for the graduation and the wedding that was following the day after. They brought fine traditional Filipino outfits for him to wear for the graduation and for the wedding. They couldn't wait to meet Winsome after Terrence spent weeks convincing his parents to accept someone from another culture. He was a bit nervous about the first meeting of families, which was to take place at lunchtime before the graduation. Winsome and Terrence planned a family luncheon before graduation at a local restaurant, so the families would have the opportunity to become acquainted before the wedding. They felt that if there was going to be any drama, they would rather have it play out before the wedding rather than during the wedding. So here's what happened at the luncheon. The families met at an Italian restaurant. As Winsome entered with her family, Terrence and his family, who were already seated, stood up to greet them. Hello, 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 hello. Everyone said hello. As Terrence continued, let me introduce you to my fiance, Winsome. Winsome went around the table shaking hands with the family, and Terrence's parents gave her a kiss on the cheek. His mother looked her over from head to toe and seemed to approve. Lovely girl, she said as she sat back down. Terrence gave her an eye in case she said something out of turn. He must have had a long chat with the family, so they'd be on their best behavior. Winsome also warned her mother and aunt to hold their tongues and not say anything if it wasn't something good. So nice to finally meet you, Terrence, and to meet your family, said Winsome's mother. So what do? She already knew that Terrence was managing the IT department, but wanted to just ask again for lack of something to say. So do you plan to stay there a long time? Winsome stared at her mother in case her questions became too intrusive. And Terrence explained that his position was a key role with the university. It was then Terrence's mother asked her series of questions about Winsome's plans to do graduate studies and who was going to pay for it. So things got a little dicey. Well, you know, that little wedding tomorrow wouldn't be the only wedding, blurted out Winsome's mother as she piled some dessert cake on her plate. Terrence's parents listened earnestly. We will have a fancy wedding in a year or two in Barbados, when we can celebrate with all our family friends. You know, several of our friends own beachfront property and large hotels, so we will have our pick as to where we'll have the reception. You are all invited, of course. You'll be well taken care of. Winsome wasn't consulted prior to this big announcement, so she was just as surprised as everyone to hear about it. So as not to be left out, Terrence's mother announced that they would also stage a large celebration in the Philippines at a gorgeous beachfront hotel owned by their family, and everyone was invited. So to find out what happened next and the drama between the two families, get your copy of Mrs. Somebody, What She Did for That Ring, because there's a lot of excitement in the book. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Let's see, on Facebook, anyone has any comment or questions? I will end the book reading, so Mrs. Somebody there. And again, if you want to get a free ebook, you can subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com/books. And if you subscribe to my website, you can get a free e-copy of Mrs. Somebody today. Now I'm going to move on to chatting with our visiting authors. First, I would like to speak with Mutendei, who is with us all the way from Kenya. So Mutendei, can you please join us on the call? Put on your video.
Hello.
Yes, so put on your camera, please, if you can.
There he is.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Kenya. What time is it over there now?
It's 11:15.
Wow, very late. So I really appreciate taking this time out tonight in your time to join us. So
You're
please
welcome.
tell us a bit about yourself and about your writing.
All right, so I am primarily a creative historical fiction writer, as well as a poet. So I like to focus a lot on social issues and unexplored African history, and that's been the focus of my writing. I've been writing for about 7-8 years now, and with each short story or book that I create, I always try to look for the untold story.
Okay, and what was your first publication, your first book? Or maybe it was poetry.
Sorry?
Just tell me when you started writing, what was your first publication?
My first publication was my book Shadowwalkers. It's a historic adventure story based on African mythology and other cultures around the world that are not necessarily given equal representation. I was inspired to write it when I saw the movie Gods of Egypt.
Okay.
Which was a bit ridiculous, and I felt that as a writer, I need to participate to creating an authentic narrative, and that's what led me to explore unexplored histories of Africa, different legends, different deities, and then try to present them in a unified format.
Right, so tell us in title again.
Shadowwalkers, The Glory of Kings.
So Shadowwalkers.
Yes.
The Glory of Kings?
Yes.
Okay. And where can listeners find this book if they wanted to get it?
Right now, it is available on Amazon. I am arranging to working with a Canadian publisher and marketer to get copies locally available in Canada and the US, along with some other books. But right now, I do have e-copies available.
Right. So we can get e-copies of Shadowwalkers on Amazon if anybody's interested. Yeah. Okay, very good. And what other publications you've had? Because I've seen some nice illustration. Who does the illustration? Would you do the illustration yourself or not?
No, so I've partnered with a talented local artist, a very good friend of mine, Point Blank Kivumbi. So we are together as a partnership adapting the book into a comic, just to increase the audience, give people a visual feel of African heritage and to identify better with the characters and see themselves.
Okay. So after Shadowwalkers, tell me what were some of the other publications that you wrote?
Right, so I have jumped back and forth from poetry. So this is what Shadowwalkers looks like. I also did
let's see the cover. Oh. Go back.
Sorry about that.
Put it up to the camera so people can see it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great.
So my labor of love. After I wrote Shadowwalkers, I went into poetry. There was a time I was performing as a spoken word artist, but writing poetry has been more of my strength. So I tried to tackle a lot of political issues, my different experiences in Canada as well as in Kenya, the perspectives I've learned interacting with other artists like yourself, and just trying to translate that into a broader message for the reading public.
Okay, thank you. And so so to inform the audience, I met Mutendei years ago when he lived in Toronto. And I can't remember, maybe it was at a writer's event. And since you moved back to Kenya,
It was actually,
tell me, because I can't remember.
we met at, it was at a high school book fair, I believe, that we met.
Oh, okay.
In Scarborough, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, yes. Right. Yes. Oh, Kia Publishing Book Fair, probably.
Because, yes, and then I think we also talked at another event as well.
Right. Okay, so since you moved back to Kenya, what sort of writers' activities have you been involved in?
It's been an adjustment in terms of finding out, again, what the audience likes and the stories they're looking for. There is a move away from European or Western-centric stories to tell our own stories. So I've been working hard on identifying or assimilating myself with local culture and trying to better represent it. And then once more, telling the untold story or stories people may feel shy about telling. So whether it's dealing with politics, spy stories, that kind of thing.
Okay, so you incorporate real stories into fictional characters, is that?
Yes.
Okay. Very good, very interesting. So what is your latest publication?
My latest publication, and one is, which I've been struggling on because I want to get it right. It's a story about a vigilante. So we have a former Kenyan military service officer who's lived a carefree lifestyle. He's been a party boy, just a typical soldier. And then his sister, who's a scientist and has been working with medicine within the poorer areas of the country, poorer areas of the city, some slums, ends up getting killed. Then he finds out unexpectedly and he comes out and starts investigating. And then he realizes there's a conspiracy that's going on that involves his sister. And he's been tasked by his sister and her husband with fulfilling her final wishes. So in trying to live up to that promise, he transforms himself. He learns about all the problems he's been overlooking, just taking his position and his responsibilities for granted, and then calling into question whether the people he serves are the right people to be in cahoots with. And he eventually ends up turning against them, and yeah.
Okay, so I was just looking at the Facebook feed to see if there was any question from the viewers. Does anyone have a question for Mutendei? I'm looking at this. Does anyone have a question for Mutendei? I'm not seeing any question at the moment. All right, since we don't have any more questions, thank you so much for joining us. Please put, do you have a website that the viewers can go to find out about your work?
Yes, so my website is mutendeiwrites.com.
Mutendei
where I do regular, yes.
Please
I try to do monthly stories.
Spell it so that the viewers can go look for it.
Sure. MUTENDEI writes.com. And yes, I try to do monthly stories, just covering different topics, different adventures, that kind of thing, just to build a wide body of work.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I put the website in the Facebook Live chat box so that everyone can visit. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it. And
it's been a pleasure.
We'll be in touch. So now I will go on to Francis Jeffers. Francis, please join us here on Zoom. All right.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, fine, thank you. And thanks so much for joining the chat this afternoon. So Francis is
No problem at all.
based in Toronto. Please tell us about your work and what publications are coming up.
So I'm the founder and executive director of the Canadian Multicultural Inventors Museum. And basically we are a science promotion organization, a STEM promotion organization, and all about looking at diversity in STEM. So therefore, what the stories that we tell basically is the diversity in terms of the history of innovation. A lot of times when you hear about various innovators, there's a lot of segmentation that happens that's not very encompassing of the whole spectrum of innovation. And so therefore, what we bring to the marketplace is that this is the concept that every people, regardless of their race, their sexuality, their country of origin, their nationality, their gender, have all contributed to the world. And so what we do is share those stories. It's to empower young people to see themselves in the science, so they can move hopefully from being a consumer to an innovator, and also to redress some of the systematic issues that we've had in terms of the stories, right? Because at the end of the day, we live in this amazing country called Canada. It is a gorgeous country. There's tremendous talent. There's people from, especially if you live in an area like GTA, people from maybe 160 different countries. And so there's stories to tell. All of these people have children, their kids going to school. And what we're looking at is taking multiculturalism to another level, especially in terms of innovation. And since innovation is the driving force of the future, so that therefore we need people to see themselves in that, as part of that, so that therefore they're part of the whole Canadian ecosystem moving forward to having an innovative and inclusive Canada.
Right, thank you so much. So please tell us a bit about the Multicultural Museum and how you got started with that.
Well, it started from the basis that I ran my first organization was the Visions of Science, which is a network of science clubs. And one of the things we did in the science club is have the kids that when they do an experiment to also research an inventor who looks like them or a scientist who looks like them. The whole, again, is coming back to seeing yourself in the science. So if you did a microbiology experiment, there is a microbiologist who looks like you. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your sexuality is. Whatever, there are people who look like you. And so therefore, you're part of a continuum in the history of innovation. You're not a Johnny come lately or whatever, right?
Yes.
So we move into a point of taking science to another level, one that is very inclusive. And I think being based in Canada, I mean, I think we're in sync with the fact that it's interesting that a country from Canada is the one that has this, right? And that's kind of diversity and this type of excitement about people from all different backgrounds. You know what I mean? For example, we have, like 15 different exhibits, traveling exhibits. But one of the things is that there is no traveling exhibit in North America of indigenous innovators, which doesn't make any sense, right? So therefore, we show the history of innovators who are indigenous from going all the way back thousands of years ago, be they in North America, be they in South America, be they in the Caribbean. We show inventors and the innovations of people from the Kalinago people and the Taino people of the Caribbean. So again, it's getting everybody to tell their stories. We live in a fascinating world, and in order to ensure that everybody feels good, we need to share their stories.
Right. Which leads us on to the publication that you're working on. So please tell the audience about your publication that's coming up.
It's pretty exciting. We are launching in January 2021 a series of, or it's called the CMIM Innovator Series. Our first book actually is going to be.
Please tell us what CMIM means.
So CMIM is the Canadian Multicultural Inventors Museum, right? Okay. And I hope your listeners will Google us
Put it.
Our website is multiculturalmuseums.org. So it's multicultural museums plural at org. And there you'll see information about, you'll see blogs, you'll see information about inventors, innovators from all different backgrounds. We have Facebook groups showing, from colonial Africa to present day innovators. I think that by the time you go on our website and go to our Facebook books, you might knock off a whole day. That's the amount of content we have. So in our series of books, the e-books coming out where we're going to feature 7 innovators of different demographics, right? But our first book is a pan-Canadian one. So we're showing, innovators, one who is a South Asian, Dr. John. Then we have Cornelia Wyman, who is the first Indigenous psychiatrist in Canada. We have Anne Makanowski, who is a Filipino Canadian. We have Elijah McCoy, who was maybe the most famous Black Canadian innovator. We have Irene Yusinda, who is a Japanese geneticist. And interesting enough, there you go into the fact that she and Dr. Suzuki was interned during World War II. And there's Mary Wu Sims, who is a East Asian, but also a lesbian. Okay, so again, we're touching on that full concept of diversity, and that will be our first prototype book, which is showing their stories. In what you'll have pictures of the inventor, what they've invented, information for students. There'll be animation, video interviews, audio or video. We will have a teacher's guide. So our books can be used in a classroom by especially middle school teachers. It can be used from parents who homeschool. It can be used just for families that engage in history. There will be multilingual. Or book will be bilingual. And then we have, which is very dear to my heart as a person of African descent, our first book on African Canadian innovators and also innovators from around the world, right? So we'll have 2 books coming out in January and February about innovators. We'll feature people like Alan Emtridge, who is a Bajan Canadian who created artsy, which is the world's first internet search engine. He's in the Hall of Fame of the internet, right? We have Dr. Kumaro, who is a Ugandan scientist who is based in Nova Scotia, who has made very cheap, efficient diagnostic kits especially for countries that are not extremely poor, that are not extremely rich, and he makes diagnostic kits for Western countries. So what he does is kind of a Peter, you charge Peter to pay Paul. He makes stuff for Paul. You know what I mean? A kind of Robin Hood type of experience in terms of his work. We have Julia Daniel from Barbados, a scientist at McMaster University, who's working on breast cancer, especially as it relates to people of African descent, Black women, because Black women's cancer is very, very rapid onset at a particular time in life. And she isolated a gene which she called calypso, right? So again, it's people who are proud of themselves, proud of their work. We have Marianne Anna Trade from University of Toronto, who's a specialist in lizards. I'm sorry, spiders. She's an ecologist, Canadian entomologist, Jamaican background. In 2005, she was considered one of the brilliant 10 by Popular Science magazine. And we have Lonnie Johnson, and for kids who have used the water gun, Lonnie Johnson is the inventor of the water gun, a nuclear engineer, right?
Yes, so it sounds like it's going to be a really
absolutely
amazing publication.
But we have a special person though, eh? We feature a special person, and her name is Dr. James. Her name is Dr. Jennylynd James, and she is I can't tell you her biography. She's an artist, she's a writer, she's an entrepreneur, she's a scientist, a food scientist. You know what I mean? So like, I mean, read. You gotta get those books. It's gotta be on Amazon. It's gotta be on our website. We'll be find as many sources of how to. We'll be promoting it on social media, etc. But what is going to do as a parent, as a person of the word, is read amazing stories about people who are innovators. And before the end of the year, we'll have a book on East Asians, on South Asians, on Filipino Canadians. We'll have a book on Somalian entrepreneurs. I mean, we are covering everybody in our series, right? Because we're a privilege as Canadians in celebrating who we are, and we're not one of those from south of the border. We have our own stories, and we're gonna tell our stories to the world.
Very good. Sounds exciting. So it will be on Amazon, and you will do promotion. What have you decided on titles? The title of the book?
We haven't decided on title yet. I think what we're going to do is we have a lot of young people volunteer with us, and we're going to ask them to contribute to it. Right through in all our books, we have a mascot, which is a small robot, a 3-foot robot, and this robot is a CMIM bot, and that robot will be branded on all our publications in everything that we do, and we're looking to an exciting time of inclusivity, right? Making sure that people understand. Yeah.
Now let me just check to see, do we have any questions on Facebook? Would anyone have questions for Francis Jeffers? Let me see if we have any questions on our Facebook chat. Oh, there's KWI Bonafide. So happy you're here this afternoon. And let's see, any questions? Oh, Charmaine is on the Instagram Live. Hi, Charmaine, good to see you.
Is this the famous Canadian artist?
Yes. So we have one question. Voilà. What did it take to launch the museum?
Just passion. I have a passion for STEM. I have a passion for young people. I have a passion for young people of African descent, that we tell our stories. We don't have to wait on anybody. We will decide our stories, we'll tell our stories, we'll interpret our stories. And I share that passion for all young people. It was a question of that representation matters. And we have to make sure that people are aware of what's going on. We have to make sure that we change the trajectory for our children and for all Canadian children. This country is amazing. I'm very high on Canada. I'm very high on the diversity in Canada. Oops.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Francis seemed to be fading out. Okay, that's all right. So that brings us to the end of this afternoon's exciting presentations. Thank you so much, Mutendei. You can show your camera if you like. Thank you, Mutendei, who is called in from Kenya, and thank you, Francis Jeffers. We're so happy to have you.
You're welcome.
This episode, I call it Jennylynd's Writers Collective, episode 2. So thank you so much for participating. I sincerely appreciated your input, and you're working on fabulous projects to tell the African story. In case of Mutendei, untold stories, as you call them. So we appreciate that. And then Francis Jeffers, we certainly appreciate learning about all those scientists from all various cultures, people we would never generally hear about. So these are fabulous projects. Thank you so much again. And see you next time. We'll do this again in the future. Thanks again.
Take all the best.
Okay, bye-bye.
Continue success. Bye-bye.